Hey guys, how are you? My name is Mustafa Alqaragholy. You can call me Moose, and I'm a motion designer, and I do a lot of different projects. I've worked on Marvel and DC shows, and I utilize Cinema 4D for a lot of my work. So today what I want to do is show you some of the techniques that I use to when I'm creating 3D animation. So I'm not specifically going to go into anything like a full-on project. I'm just going to show you little techniques here and there. Hopefully it's not going to be all over the place, but these are just simple things that I feel like are very useful, especially if you're trying to get into Cinema 4D that you would commonly use. So before we start, I'm just going to show you a quick like a demo reel. I'm not really heavy into social media, and I haven't updated my portfolio in a while, so this is just some of my work. A lot of times when you're doing these kind of things, you can't share them unless they're broadcasted live, and then you have the permission to use them. So here's just a simple one. Alright, okay, so let's jump into Cinema 4D and show you kind of the things that I do. So a lot of times when you start a new project and you're working on a 3D part, the client will provide you the 3D model. Sometimes it's a clean model, sometimes it's a heavy, dense model, and it's hard to work with. So before we start into anything, I'm just going to show you how to prepare your model for work and how to clean it up if it needs some cleaning. So let's say we have okay, this type of car. Actually, I have a better one. Okay, let's say this sedan here. I'm just going to copy it into a new scene, and let's look at how it looks. I'm going to press NQ. That turns off the material, because right now I have a black material on it. And what I want to do, like right now, I want to do something to the car. I want to maybe rotate the wheels. I want to make the door open, but the problem is the model is just one solid piece. I can't do anything to it. I can maybe go into face mode and try to select some of these things. If it has, like for example, if I double click here, it will select the door and you can extract it out. Or you can right click and say there's an option for a split. If you do a split and go back into normal mode, you have the door now by itself. Obviously it keeps another copy in there, but that's not the best way to go about doing it, because if you go that route, you're gonna have a lot of parts and you're gonna be here working all day doing this kind of thing. If you select the car, you can go into tools, convert, and then polygon islands into objects. Give it a few seconds and Cinema will do all the work for you. This is a great technique, especially if you get CAD files that are just one file. A lot of times they're OBJs. So now if you unscroll, everything is separated and you can do whatever you want with it. Now the problem here that happens sometimes is now we have the parts are separated, but you can see, like, if I want to control the hood, I want to rotate it. Look where it's rotating from. It's not correct. So what you can do is command select everything, and there's an option here to center axis to. So if you press shift, let me get out of that, shift C, and then type center axis to, which is right here. You can drag it into your interface and just double click it while you have everything selected, obviously. Right now everything inside this group, if I middle mouse click on top, it will select everything inside that, like all the children. And then if I double click, you can see that now each object has its what's it called, the axis right in the center of the object. So that's one thing. The other thing I want to go over is, let's say you already got the model like this, but you don't want to like have it in all million pieces. You just want it to be one object. You can select the model and then come down to connect object plus delete, or connect object. I'm going to go with connect object plus delete so it doesn't create a duplicate car model. And then now it's back to one piece like how we had it in the beginning. All right, so that's one thing. I'm going to go over animation techniques that I do, but before I do, I just want to kind of like briefly go over the different shaders or different passes that we typically do in FUI, and to create these holographic look and futuristic looks and things like that. So typically these type of passes are, I'll show you here, consist of a Fresnel pass, you know, a regular just a regular pass with just maybe ambient occlusion, dots, different types of dots, wireframe, and some sort of x-ray. So if I come back into cinema and let's quickly kind of like recreate these type of things. Whenever you're doing different passes, especially if you're doing an animation, the biggest thing you can like do that will like really piss you off is if you try to do the passes and then you come back into compositing inside After Effects and you find out they're not aligned. What happens is sometimes you render an image like this and then you accidentally move your camera, and then you're like, oh man, how do I get back to where I exactly was? And that causes you to have to re-render everything. So what I typically do is create a camera that I'm happy with. So let's say I pick this type of angle and I'm like, okay, this is what I want. I'm gonna change the focal. Okay, this is great. What I do is right click, come back into rigging and add this protection tag. This protection tag will freeze your camera. It will stop you from moving it, so you don't have to have that problem. And then when you create all your different passes, they're all going to be perfectly aligned. This is perfect, especially if you're creating animation, which will take a long time to render all these you know, keyframes. So remember to add this tag. So let's go and start creating the different shaders. Once we create the different shaders, we'll start to move into different maybe animations. I'm not going to composite these in After Effects. I'm just going to show you how to create them. When you go on your computer and you start to play around with it, go in After Effects and try to play around with different compositing techniques. But my main focus is just to teach you how to create these. So the first thing I want to do is create the Fresnel pass, which is the one that looks like it has a shadow in the center and then highlights on the edges. Create a new material, and turn everything off except luminance. You're gonna hear me say we're gonna use luminance only a lot of times. Then inside the texture tag, go into Fresnel and apply this on my car. Right now you're not seeing it because I turned off the material. So if you click N, Q, I'll bring it back. Double click, go inside the options for it, and then play around with this, with the gradient. I like to get the center to look a little bit dark and have the highlights on the edges. And that's pretty much it for that. Now I need to create the second pass, but before I do, I don't want to create another pass and drop it on top of this and lose what I did. What I like to do is, this is the old school way of doing things. Takes is a pretty nice system. Look into it. I'm not going to go over it today, but look into how Takes works. What Takes does is saves different versions of your model with different materials and things like that. I'm just going to stick to the way I'm comfortable with, and what I'm going to do is just duplicate my model and hide the first one by double clicking on these, making sure they're red so I don't see them here or in my render. And the second thing I'm going to do is apply my material on top of it so I can see live feedback of how it looks. So second pass that I want to do is maybe my reflections. So turn off everything, and actually reflectance will stay on, and I'm gonna delete this, add a new one, maybe GGX or Beckman, whatever you like, doesn't matter. And I want to lower everything except the reflection strength. So I got this and it looks good. Let's see how that renders out. So nothing. We don't see anything here. Let me get these out of the way. Okay, nothing's reflecting. Why? Even though it looks like this in the viewport, because there's nothing to reflect on it. Right now, this is basically like a mirror, and we'll need an environment for it to show anything. And well, to do that, we will create a sky. Now the sky is all white, so that's not gonna help. So we need to create a new material, turn everything off except the luminance channel. Inside the luminance, I'm gonna find an HDR map that I like. So actually here, let's click here. And I can use some, you know, like simple HDR maps, but I want one with an environment, like a real environment. I found these at HDR Haven. If you're not familiar with it, it's a really nice site. Look into it. I'm just gonna pick any random one here. Maybe this. Okay, once we got this, we drop this onto the sky. Maybe this is too bright. Let's see. Let's change it. Photoshop. Okay. If we render this right now, like, it looks way too bright. It's way too bright, and the other problem is our background is showing too. So there's a way to get rid of the background. If you right click on your sky, come down into rendering and composite and tag. Here you have an option that says scene by camera. Turn that off. And let's see. Oh, the problem is here I got color on. I got to turn that off. Okay, now it looks a lot better. And the other thing I want to do here where it says blur offset, I'm just going to make this maybe 15. It just calms it down a bit, so that way you're not really seeing anything specific. I don't want nobody saying, oh, this is distracting. Just blur it a bit and you'll get a nicer look. Here's another thing that you need to do. When you render this now, it's coming through, but there's another thing you can add that will make it even better. In your car, in your composite and tag. Okay, so this was already added, but let me show you kind of. If you have this without any other tags, this is how it will come out. It'll come out with this like weird artifacts here, and the way you can get rid of that is by adding another compositing tag on top of your model. You come back into rendering, and then into compositing, and then in compositing you uncheck this that says scene by reflection. Uncheck that, and when you render, it looks a lot cleaner compared to what you see here. Earlier it was like this because I already had that tag on. I just deleted it to show you the difference. All right, now we got our reflections and next thing we need to do is our point cloud. Now, when we do point clouds are basically when you have a lot of dots on your model. So it could look like this, or it could be something like these little dots that move all around. They could be, you know, something like this. Different sizes, they move at a different pace. And if I have a model that's really heavy, like that's really dense with a lot of geometry, that's going to take a really long time to calculate. Now if you need to have that, go for it, but there's other ways to get a similar look, and I'll show you kind of how to do that. But I'm just gonna, like, just to demonstrate, I'm gonna show you what the regular dots will look like. So we use a cloner, and we'll go into a sphere and drop that into the into the cloner, and then let's see, let's make a new copy first, and call it dots. There we go, and turn off the other ones, and we don't need this material on it. For this, what I want is just black with nothing on it. And the way that looks, actually, I'll make a new one. I'm going to turn off everything. This is basically like just to create a matte, and I'll show you why I do this. So in my cloner, there's different modes that you can clone things on. You can clone in a grid. Let me turn off the car so you can see it. So right here, here's our cloner. You can do a grid. You can increase and decrease the amounts. You can go into a linear field, and you can pick, you know, the amount and how far and all that. What I want, there's different modes. Play around with these modes. I'm looking to do object mode, and I feed it the object that I want these to clone on. So I'm going to feed it the car, and now you can see, okay, they're getting cloned onto the car. But first of all, right now they're way too big, and the second thing is, even if I increase the amount that's on there, it's still kind of hard to see what we're looking at, because you're seeing what's in front of the car, the inside of the car, the back of the car, all at one time. That's why I keep my model visible, and then I put a black material on, because it will start to act as a matte and only show me what's facing the camera, so I don't have to see any distracting things. And right now, obviously, this is not even close to being enough. So before I increase the count, there is an instant mode. You can change it from instant to render instant, and that allows it to be easier to calculate for cinema. And if you do multi-instance, that's going to make it even easier. So now, instead of doing, let's say 65, I can do, let's say 2000, and you can see them, you know, a lot easier on there. The other thing is, I don't want any shading on these dots, so what I'm going to do is make a new material, add it to these dots inside my cloner, and in the channels, I'm going to keep only luminance on. That will give me that kind of look. But again, this is not what I want, so I'm going to change the way this is being projected onto the way these are cloned onto the car. And if I come into distribution, instead of surface, I can put polygon center. That might take a little bit of time to calculate, because again, this is really heavy in geometry. I hope I'm not going to freeze cinema. Okay, there we go. It did it. But as you can see, I'm going to get rid of that. I don't want this to freeze on me. Even though cinema is really good at handling a lot of these type of calculations, I'm just going to get it so I don't slow down my presentation. So we'll bring it back to surface, and you know, I'll show you the other way we can do this. By the way, when you have these clones, you can go and add different shaders, let's add a shader effector, no, a random effector, and that can play around with the position. But for this kind of thing, you don't want to do that. You just want to play with scale, and in scale, I'm going to keep it uniform, and then, you know, shrink it down so you have some that are big and some are small. I usually do -1, and then I turn on absolute scale, so you only go in one direction, you don't go so that way you'll just keep things the way they were or a little bit smaller. So that's another pass. The other way you can do dots is through a texture. So I'm gonna make a new copy of my car, and I'm gonna hide this, and I'm gonna hide my cloner since I don't need it for this, and make a new material, add it into my new car, and this, we'll call this dot texture. Naming your files is really important. I'm not really doing that here right now because I'm just trying to get things, you know, show you guys what I'm doing as fast as I can. but it's really important that you name everything proper, so that way if you come back to it in the future, you know what you did. If someone else works on your file, they know what to edit. So back to the material, I go into the luminance channel and I select surfaces and I go into tiles. So tiles is going to project this picnic looking thing, but there is ways to modify this to make it look better. So this used to be, I mean, if you click on the pattern, you see there's a lot of different things you can pick from. I like to pick one of the circles, maybe this, and I don't like how this is being projected on the car. So what I'm going to do is come to where this texture tag is on the vehicle and change the way it's being projected. So from UV mapping, I'm going to change it to cubic, and already we can see this looks a lot better. And then I can play around with the different colors. I'm going to just keep it black and white, and I will try to like blend in things in between, but I'm just going to keep it something like this. Now I don't like how it's all even. I'm going to try to see if I can find a way to randomize them. There used to be a button that says randomize. Not seeing it right now. I'm not sure if it's been okay. Just clicking this just makes it a lot better, and you can play around with scale. Maybe here you can make them a little smaller. You know, the scale of the vehicle, like how big it is in the scene, makes a difference of how this is being projected. So you can do something like this. You can change the circles. You can change it into, I don't know, let's see, lines. Even though this may look weird, in post, there's a lot of things you can do to it. And the way you composite it and the way you can animate things, you can achieve a lot of different looks. And in the FUI world, it's encouraged you come up with something new. It's not always about just repeating what you've seen. The hard thing to do is to come up with something different. It's much easier to just copy what's already there. But in this type of industry, they're looking for something new. So they want you to experiment and come up with something nice. There is no right or wrong. If it looks cool and it conveys the story that they want to push, that's all they care for. So let's hide this. And so typically these would be the render passes that you would use. The other one is your lines. So let's get rid of this material. Your wireframing. And if you come into these options and render options and come down to effects, there's a thing called cell render. Once you click this, this will give you a nice outline of your vehicle. Now right now, my vehicle, because it's one piece, I don't really see a lot of details inside. But if I break it like how we did earlier, we go into tools, convert polygons to objects. Let's give it a little bit of time so it can calculate. What this is going to do is going to break it into pieces like how we had. It's done. Now if I render, we should get a different look. So now the reason that happens is now it's looking at the boundaries of main surfaces and it's drawing a line where these start and end. So if you're trying to get line frames, it's really good idea to have the car parts separate instead of all one piece. What I typically do is I would render out an outline pass, and then I do another pass that gets me the interior details. And that would be the edges. So I can turn off outline and do another render, and that will give me the interior lines. This is really cool. It can add a lot to your renders. So the reason I separate them, here let me do another render, and I'll show you why I like to separate these. When in post, what I can do is make this one color and then this a different color, and then when I composite them, it'll look really nice. And I can play with opacity, dull these down, and keep these really bright, maybe add a glow on the edge, and then these will be calmer. So it just gives you a lot more flexibility. Let's see what else. So I think this is good enough right now for materials. Maybe I'll do one more. Let's do one more, and that would be the scan. Let's say we need to scan this vehicle and we want to show a line that goes across that, you know, is showing the car is being analyzed or anything. So we need to make a new, first we need to turn off our cell render because we're done with that. Otherwise we're going to keep getting it. Oh, by the way, for cell render, I typically do the edge color as white and then the background as black. And that becomes a lot easier to work with in After Effects. So I do that the same with the outline and the edge. Yeah, and then in post you can control it, the brightness or color. I don't like to add color in a lot of my renders out of cinema. Like I can make this look like it's a blue, you know, type thing, but I don't do that because I can easily achieve this in After Effects, and I can control it to be whatever color. But if I export it out with one color here, it becomes harder to do in After Effects. So I just like to keep it white. So I'm done with this. Let me show you how you can do a scan. Oh, whenever you're doing this kind of thing, I think I mentioned this earlier, right? Well, just in case I didn't mention it, your camera, you need to have a camera of where you're gonna work, and you need to actually I did mention it here. Yeah, never mind. Okay, let's go back in our camera and let's do a scan effect. So we're gonna create a new material and we're gonna drop it onto the car, but I don't want the one with a lot of different materials. I just want the, like this single piece. Okay, get rid of that one and add our new material, and we can call this scan effect. And like usual, we used luminance, turn off everything else. And then luminance, we go this time to gradient. And in gradient, it's not looking too good the way it is right now. Go inside the gradient and change it into 3D linear, and turn off cycles. What I needed to cycle, we need it to happen one time. And then we got here these fields. These two go together, these two go together, and these go together. This row is X, Y, Z. So this controls basically when your gradients start and where it ends, and it's fed by what you see here. So we need to work with this and that to get the look that we want to get. So if I don't want it to go in this direction, I want to go, we can do this kind of direction, up and down as a scan. I think that will look cool. Or we can do from front to back. So it's really about your preference or whatever the project needs. So let's do it right now from bottom to top. So starting from the bottom, first we need to define how our scan looks. We will bring this white into the center, and we will bring another black to the corner, and this is gonna control how our scan line will look. So we keep doing this, and then where it's positioned will be controlled by this right here. So we can start with -40. Keyframe this, and then let's move into, let's say, frame 30, and move it up, see where it would end. More and more, okay. So it ended like maybe 1,400. Okay, a little more. 1,450. Okay. So now, if you animate this, it's gonna do this. Now, I don't want it to happen one time, I want it to keep repeating, but right now it's repeating because it's ending in my, my time frame is ending. Let's say I have, 360 frames, nothing will happen. So what you can do is go back into your gradient, and where it says, let me pause this, where I animated, I'm gonna select this, go to animation, show F curve. It's gonna bring out my keyframes. I'm gonna select them and go into function, track after, and then select repeat after. What this does is gonna repeat my animation over and over again, so that way, you know, I'm gonna get this cycle of scanning throughout for whatever duration that I want it to be. And what's cool is you can control how fast this comes. So let's say I don't like the speed of this. I want it to be a lot slower. I can select one of my keyframes and stretch it out to 60, and it automatically updates into the rest of them. And let's say I wanted to scan maybe and not scan right away. What I can do is just copy this, pause that, go into my scan effect, and let's say 40, then I want it to be at 60 to stay where it was. Actually, hold on, 1450, okay. 1450, keyframe that, and now it's gonna have a hold before it repeats. See? There we go. All right, so we're done with this. I'm just gonna go into now different ways of creating different types of animation using MoGraph tools. So let's create a new scene and show you a cool effect that could be used as a scanning way, like a scanning technique. So let's start with a model. Let's pick a model. We have, let's say, body or male. Okay, this guy would work. I don't need the materials. Okay, now I want to create a nice cool effect where this guy is being scanned. It could be some sort of like he's being analyzed, his body or something. So to do this, I'm going to use the matrix object along with different techniques with a Voronoi fracture. So if you haven't used the Voronoi fracture, it's what it does basically is it breaks your model into pieces. So first I'm going to connect this guy. I'm just going to make him as one piece first. We said we go to connect object plus delete. Now it's just one piece. Drop it under the Voronoi fracture, and what that's going to do is, so it broke it into pieces. Any piece that's different color is basically its own piece. If we come into the Voronoi fracture, into the object tab, offset fragments, you can offset them. I think I have too many files open, so let me just close some of these. Nope. Yeah, what's cool about cinema is it can handle so much. I take advantage of that sometimes and I overload it. All right, we're getting there. All right, back to my model. Okay. All right, I think we're good now. Let me just close in more. Okay. So when we do the offsetting, we can control, like, you know, the amount, but we also have control over how many pieces it breaks into and how it breaks. If you go into source and come back into and click into where it says source and then points generator, this is feeding the way this breaks. And here it says points amount. We can control how many points it has, and the more you add, the more it's going to break. So I'll give it a sec, and there you go. So it now has a lot more breaks. You can do some cool stuff with this. You can animate these, you can transition them in. For example, I can add a shader effector to it, and then in the shader effector I go into parameters and change the scale to -1 so everything is off, and then have it come back using let's use a linear field, and let's use a vertical linear field. Now I think my model is way too small. Let me just scale this up. Okay, maybe this size is good. Turn that back on. All right. Now, if I animate this up, you can see how my model comes in. And then disappear. And you can have it do different things. Instead of just scale, you can have the position be affected. So you can get this nice cool effect like it's being downloaded. So that's one way. The other thing you can do is you can get rid of the shaders and change the way this is breaking apart. So I'm gonna get rid of this point cloud. Now we're back to the default, and I'm gonna do a new thing, which I'll create a spline and then feed that spline into a matrix object and have that affect the way it breaks. So I'm going to take the spline tool. I'm just going to draw a straight line, something like this. Yeah, this is good. All right, and it doesn't matter where the spline is, but it does matter about the way it's rotated. So take the spline and then put that in. Let's create a matrix object. Matrix. The difference between a matrix and a cloner. A cloner needs something to clone. Matrix looks like it's already cloning something, but none of this is really renders. This is just placeholders, like data placeholder. I'm going to change the mode again from grid to object, and I'm going to feed the spline into as the object. So now it gives me these, and what's cool about when you clone onto a spline versus a geometry, a spline will feed the matrix object a new area that allows you to animate. So for example, here where it says rate, I can change this to like a 7, and I'll start to animate. And I can play around with the offset. Let me add more frames so I can see this. I can increase the rate variation, and then you'll get some pieces that go fast and that will go slow. For what I'm doing right now, I just want it to be all even, and I want it to go in the negative direction, down. And I want this now to slice my model. So come back into the Vernor fracture, go into the source, and take your matrix and drop it in there. What that's going to do now is going to break it. Typically, again, this goes really, really fast. I did it earlier. For some reason, I think I've been overworking my computer probably. So anyways, I can come back here and then go into the matrix, and where it says distribution, count, and I can control how many times this breaks. So 13, I'll just add more. Okay. And if I hit animate, by the way, these colors that keep popping up and down, we can turn that off. Let's give it a sec. Okay. If they're distracting you, you can come back into this object, colorize fragments, and turn that off. and then inside the, once you select the spline, you can change the direction of the spline, and it will affect how this is being cut. Alright, so again, see, it changed here, but again, I don't know, my computer's probably acting up, but it does like whatever orientation you put it in, it changes it up, and because this is animated, it will animate over time. So let me move on to something else that I want to show you, and let's see. I want to show you kind of like what we did here earlier in one of the pieces. It looked like it was a 2D element. Yeah, these graphs right here. I want to create some of these in Cinema 4D. These are not in After Effects, these are all 3D stuff. So let's come back into Cinema and go into create a new plane. Expand that out. Let's see how the geometry looks. We need a lot more. Let's add, let's say 50 by 50. Maybe a little bit less here. 30. Yeah, I think that's good. And then we need to create a cloner. You can add a sphere, or you can add this Platonic. It looks like a sphere from far. It's just a little bit less geometry. And we're going to do multi-instance again, so we don't slow down. And then the way we project clone this is going to be on an object, and we're going to use the plane as an object. So I'm going to hide it because I don't need to see it. I don't need it to render. I just need it to be my surface. And then from distribution mode, we're going to change this to vertices. And obviously this needs to scale way down. So here we go, even smaller. And now what we need to do is add a material to these Platonics and change this to luminance, turn off everything else so you can kind of see how it looks like. All right, and maybe a little bit smaller, just so it's cleaner. Okay, what I want to do is have this animate and maybe go along back and forth. So the way we can do this is we first create a displacement. We can do a displacement in the object. Actually, here we can do it in the cloners first. We can go into our cloner. I mean, use our cloner to affect the scale. Okay, and I don't want it to affect the position right now. Just scale. I'll affect the position of something else. Scale, uniform, -1. Okay, so now we got a nice, a lot of variety of different sizes. Looks more interesting this way. And now we need to animate them bouncing up and down. What I'm going to do is make a new cloner, and a random effector. And instead of it being a random, I'm going to change this to turbulence. If you animate this now, okay, you know what, that's one way of doing it, and you can control the speed here. Let's say I want it to slow down, and the way this is being animated, I don't want it to go in all axes, I just want it to go up and down. Okay, that's not, nope. Okay, here. Okay, so I'm just gonna increase this. So it's now you're seeing it being moved. But now I don't want it to happen throughout the whole thing, so I want to limit to when this gets affected. I'm going to add a new field, and I'm going to make this into a box field. And what the box field does is going to affect which areas are being animated. So if you animate this across and back, you'll start to see it. And I'm going to make this even wider, a little bit taller. So it's going to go all around, and it's going to do this. I don't like how my geometry is just laying there flat and looks boring. So I'm just going to do something to it. I'm going to create a null and drop it inside the null. And I'm going to add a twist to it. First, we need to rotate the twist so we know which directions rotate it. And then expand its length, make it as wide as your geometry, and then add oh, we got to put it inside the null for it to work. And then we can rotate this and get a nice effect. So let's just do 360 maybe. It's kind of hard to see what's happening. And width. Yeah, let's turn off, let's hide these lines so we don't see them in the viewport. And same thing with our, actually I need that for right now. So if you move this across, it's animated, but it still kind of looks a little boring. We need to add more things to it. What I'm going to do is, even though right now I have this being animated, I want this to, the whole geometry to animate as well. So what I'm going to do is add a rotation to it. I'm just going to do a 360 rotation. So go into the coordinates. No, yep, right here. Frame 1 is going to be at 0. And then frame maybe 90, 360, and let's see how that looks. So it looks too fast. What we can do is select these keyframes and the rotation, and change that from spline to linear. And let's give it more frames. Let's say 300. Select that again. Select the keyframe and move it all the way out so it's slow. Okay. And then for the random effector, now it's doing its job, but I don't like how it's just sitting there. And I want to animate it, but I don't want to manually move it. What I want to do is I'm going to add a thing called vibrate tag. And the vibrate tag, what it will do is it'll allow you to, it'll just add random animation to your whatever you place it on. You can put it into your rotation, scale, or position. I'm gonna put it in my, actually I'm gonna put it in my position. And oh, hold on, fix this. Okay, go back into the vibrate tag, and then I can increase the amount of how many times it moves back and forth. So let's say 2000, and then the frequency. So right now it's kind of like too fast. You can see it's like acting crazy. Maybe 2000 is too much. So let's try 1000. That's a lot better. And then frequency, let's try half. Okay, that's still too much. Maybe 0.2. Okay, so you can see it affecting this, but I don't like the amount that it's affecting it with. There's another way you can affect the geometry and the dots. I'm gonna disable the the linear fill that we just created, and I'm gonna add a different way. So there's a lot of ways you can do the same task in Cinema, so I'm just gonna show you another way you can do this. If you go to Displacer and add it inside your null that has the plane, it will affect the plane. Anything inside this null you add will have an effect on the plane. So inside this, I will choose noise and go into noise, maybe increase the contrast a bit. Come back to the height area, and now I'm affecting it a lot more. Go back into the shading and add an animation. I'm going to make it maybe 0.6. When you add this, it allows it to be animated. It animates the noise, and the noise drives the displacement. So I like this a lot more than the way it was looking. And then with this, I will add a linear field, so that way it's not it's happening all over. So here we got a fields tab, and I'm gonna add that box that we had earlier, and let's scale it up. Yep, like this. And we can do the same effect with the vibrate tag. We already know we need position, and we might need 0.3, and we might need maybe 1,000. And then hide this so I can see kind of how it looks. And this can be affecting like other things, for example, your scale. So for this, we can delete this and bring in the field that we animated earlier, so that way they're all affecting the same things. Anyways, that's one way of doing things. We don't have a lot of time left. I want to show you another thing with when you clone different objects. For example, let's say we have this shape. This could be any object. It could be a shape, it could be an object, and you want to animate this. So let's animate this real quick. Keyframe 1, and then 12 frames animates this amount, which is 78, 60 frames. Okay, so from here to here, and then I want it to hold for another 24 frames, animate that, and then go back to 0. Let's see how that looks. Okay, it looks good. I just want to spread these out maybe a little more, have a longer hold. Okay. Then it goes back. As simple as that. But I want to drop this in a cloner. When I drop this in a cloner, and I want to change this into a linear cloner, this is what will happen. They will all move. Actually, what you realize is that it's not moving, like you lost your animation. And the reason that is because inside the cloner wants to override the rotation, position, and scale. Actually, rotation and position mainly. But if you come back here to reset coordinates, uncheck that. Now you'll get your animation back. Okay. Now, I like how this looks, but I want a different look. So what I want to do is go into the position here and turn this into 0. So we have still 3 copies, but they're exactly where the other one is. If I have the cloner being selected and come back into the step effector, I want to show you what that does. Yeah, you're here, step effector. What it does is it will do whatever it is that you told it. Like right now it's scaling, but it's doing one after the other. Like it's multiplying the scaling amount on each copy that it sees. So we can do something like this, and Now when you animate them, they all move together, which is not that interesting, but you can do this cool effect by coming back into the step effector, and where it says here time offset, let's say we put 12. What that does is will delay every other one that wants to animate. So let's see if this is a good amount. So you'll get something like this. Now this can be applied to literally anything. You can be animating a sphere or any object, and it will just create a similar animation but with a bit offset. I want to see what else do I want to cover. So a lot of this stuff, you know, a lot of these techniques are repeated, but you might find a new approach or another technique, and you can add and you know, get a complete different result. So experiment with these type of things, and I think that's pretty much it. If you guys want to connect with me again, you can find me on social media. Polycube is my Instagram name, and my website is UI Moose. And thank you so much for watching, and hope you learned a lot, and looking forward to hearing from you. Anything that you want me to answer for you or help you with, and take care. Thank you.